production is a very paltry 1.23 million barrels per day. I mean, for a country that has more than 37 billion barrels, if we keep producing only 1.2 million barrels per day, it will take us almost 80 years or more to be able to produce the huge reserves we have. Yesterday, I was privileged to listen to the Minister of State for Petroleum at an event, and he said that actually we have no reason whatsoever not to be producing anything between 4 to 5 million barrels of crude oil every day today. And of course, we have the reserves to back that up, but we need to invest, we need to deal with the evacuation issues, and very importantly, we also need to deal with what I consider to be the mindless criminality that is going on in our upstream sector. Nigeria also has the 9th largest proven gas reserves in the world, over 206 trillion cubic feet of gas. Gas is our transition fuel. And then again, if you look at the power sector, which requires a lot of gas to power it, we don't have enough gas to power our power sector. Meanwhile, a lot of this gas is being flared. And this flaring is going on because the penalty which the oil companies are paying for flaring the gas is more like a slap on the wrist. For those kind of penalties, it makes more sense for them to flare the gas than to invest and collect the gas, which we very badly need. Domestic power supply continues to face challenges such as inadequate generation capacity, inadequate and aging distribution facilities. Now, let's look at the strategies for meeting our energy demand. The first thing I want to talk about is the role of oil and gas, again, in power generation. You know, the role of oil and gas in meeting Nigeria's growing energy demand cannot be overlooked. Focus must be on ensuring our energy security, adequacy, and affordability. The current utilization rate of our existing 4 refineries with a total installed capacity of more than 445,000 barrels per day is 0. I mean, we all know that all the refineries we have in this country, the government-owned refineries in Warri, in Port Harcourt, in Kaduna, none of them is producing. So Nigeria, up till when the Dangote refinery commissioned or started producing just a few weeks ago, our refineries production was 0, and 100% of the fuel we use in this country was imported. But thankfully, the emergence of the Dangote refinery with a capacity of 650 barrels per day, 650,000 barrels per day rather, has become a game changer. Just very recently, Dangote started producing and, of course, started pushing diesel into the country. And for those of us in the downstream, we've seen very serious downward pressure on the price of diesel, all thanks to the diesel that is now coming out of the Dangote refinery. And I can tell you that that is a very serious game changer in the industry. Now, what are the key strategies for meeting our energy demand? I will look at the downstream and the midstream sector. In the past couple of months, in fact, let me just look at between January and now, we've seen very serious fluctuation in the FX market. We started the year with FX hovering around 1,000 Naira to the dollar, and we saw it go as high as 1,900 Naira to the dollar. I mean, it got to a point where, for those of us who import a lot of petroleum products into this country, especially diesel, LPG, or jet fuels, since NNPC imports fuel 100%, it got to a point where it was very difficult for us to price our products because you really don't know what your landed cost is. You have the goods, but what is the exchange rate? I mean, it got to a point where people practically said, stop selling, don't sell. Don't sell because you can't price your products. But thankfully, due to the measures the central bank have taken, we've seen a very salutary effect. The market has calmed down. The panic is out of the window. Now, everybody, there's a lot of certainty on what the FX rate is. Like I've always said, for us, the problem is not really what the exchange rate is. It's not whether it's 1,005 or 1,008 or whatever it is. Our challenge is let us have certainty. Whatever the rate is, let us know what the rate is so people can plan. Then the second thing is the fuel subsidies phase out. When Mr. President came May last year, one of the things he said is that subsidy is gone. And truly, subsidy was gone because immediately the price of fuel moved from 200 naira per liter to 500 naira per liter. At that point, truly, subsidy was gone because officially, Naira was exchanging maybe for anything between 450 to 470. But a few weeks later, they merged the exchange rates, and Naira officially moved to about 750. At that point, subsidy was beginning to come back, again, depending on what the exchange rate was. We could go into an argument on whether the exchange rate was 750 or 500 or whatever. But the moment the two markets officially closed, by January this year, due to a policy, the CBN came and officially the market went to about 1,300. At that point, that conversation was out of the window. There was officially subsidy on petrol. If you want to know where petrol should be, just look at where diesel is. Diesel is about 1,300. Petrol is selling for 600 naira. So I can tell you for free, top of my head, there's at least 400 naira or 500 naira per liter subsidy on petrol today. If you look at what our daily consumption of, say, conservatively, 40 million liters per day, if you're spending 500 naira, that's at least 20 billion naira every day, 600 billion naira every month, or 7.2 trillion, depending on how you look at it. So subsidy is definitely back on petrol. We need to enable optimal and competitive product pricing, or product sourcing rather. Today, NNPC remains the sole importer of petrol into this country. No other person can import petrol because, again, there is subsidy on petrol. There has to be incentive for people to develop modular refining. Modular refining, I mean, government has always been saying that people should go in and go into modular refining. I strongly believe that Nigeria is a country that should be self-sufficient in refining our petroleum products, thanks to what Dangote have done, but other people should come in. But modular refining have always had their own challenges. Modular refining, from my point of view, only makes sense if you have the oil yourself. So you must couple the production with the refining. But if you decouple them, I strongly believe that modular refining kind of destroys value. So in other words, if you take if you take a barrel of crude and refine it modularly, because you don't crack it to get PMS, you actually don't get the full value. So if you have crude that is trapped, then it makes sense to refine it modularly, because little is better than nothing. But if you have to buy the crude and pay full value for it and refine it modularly, you're likely going to struggle. Government have licensed 25 modular refineries, combined capacity of more than 200,000 barrels. Only 4 of them are operational. A lot of them are not operational, and they are not likely going to operate if things continue this way. Again, Dangote refinery has come on stream. But let me speak to Dangote refining a little bit. You know, Nigeria is a country, we produce, let me even stretch it, 1.4 million barrels of crude every day. This oil is produced through a combination of production sharing contract, joint venture. So this 1.4 million barrels is actually shared between government and the IOCs. So one thing we must know is that our share of this crude is only about 50% of that. So we are producing 1.4 million barrels. NNPC or Nigeria only gets about 700,000 barrels every day. The IOCs take the rest. I'm sure we all know that. So when Dangote comes, he's done great. And if we have to give him, now, let me digress. This 700,000 barrels which comes to the country, that is what the whole country sells to get dollars to meet the needs of each and every one of us, everybody who is importing things into this country. So if you take these same 700,000 barrels and give to Dangote refinery and say he pays us in Naira, then it simply means that the whole of the country won't have access to any dollar to do any other thing they want to do. I think we need to be very clear on that. I believe that going back a few years, the moment Dangote said he was going to build a refinery, what I think the country should have done is say, if we are at 1.4 million barrels per day, let's take that as a constant and then find a way of ramping up our production to look for that incremental 650,000 barrels per day to meet the need of Dangote refinery. Then we can say that we've actually added value. But if you're going to take the same crude without increasing it and handing it over to Dangote refinery, then it becomes a double-edged sword. What you gain on one side, you lose on the other side. We need to decentralize our energy systems. The 2023 electricity bill, which now empowers states, companies, and individuals to generate and transmit and distribute electricity, I think is a wonderful policy. I was listening to Dr. Shogunle when he was talking, and a few other speakers have also alluded to that. Nigeria, with the size of this economy, that we generate only 4,000 megawatts per day, is a shame. We can't say we want to become $1 trillion economy, as Mr. President keeps saying, if we are running on a generator economy. We must find a way of solving our power problem. And one of the best ways to do that is to decentralize access to production, to distribution, so that people can come in and play. Because I believe very strongly that the power privatization that was done by the Jonathan administration, I dare say those assets were given largely to people who didn't have the capacity to run them, and people who truly have not invested to truly bring out the value